Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Climate Change, Outdoor Recreation, and Resilient Tourism. This is the second presentation in the Spring 2026 webinar series brought to you by the Center for Land Use Education. CLUE is a joint venture of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, College of Natural Resources, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. Our mission is to create learning opportunities for Wisconsin communities to help them make sound land use decisions. During the presentation, please keep your video off and microphone muted. This helps minimize background noise and reduces some technical issues. During the webinar, we will ask for your participation using the chat function. If you have questions during the webinar, you may also use the chat function. Otherwise, we will reserve 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Our webinar today will be presented by Austin Howland and Natalie Chin. Natalie is a Lake Superior Field Office Outreach Specialist for Wisconsin Sea Grant. Natalie joined Wisconsin Sea Grant's Lake Superior Field Office in August 2019. She is focused on linking actionable science with key audiences across the Great Lakes. Her current work includes co-leading the Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Working Group for WICI, co-facilitating the Enduring Lake Superior Communities Program, and projects focused on increasing the accessibility of coastal spaces and the intersections between outdoor recreation and health. She also serves as one of the North Central Region representatives for the National Extension Tourism Network and a member of the Wisconsin Council on Tourism. Austin is an assistant professor of conservation and community planning and an extension specialist for CLUE. Austin, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to begin the webinar.
Hi, thank you, Becky. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming today. I'm really excited to talk about climate change, outdoor recreation, and resilient tourism today with my co-presenter, Natalie Chin. Kind of highlighting some of the work we've been doing over the past 4-ish years, 3.5, 4 years. Throughout the presentation, we're going to have some questions for you in the chat. It'd be really great if you could respond to those, along with kind of any questions you might have. Kind of the first objective is to get a little bit to highlight what we've been doing and provide some feedback from y'all, but also to thinking about how we might move forward with some of this research and these projects in the future. So a bit of an outline for today. We're going to talk about CLUE and our kind of approach to partnerships. We'll do an introduction to WICI, and then we'll talk about the various projects, research, and outreach we've been doing in this space. And then looking at our new WICI work plan going forward that we just kind of developed as a group, and then thinking about some of the lessons learned doing climate change extension work here in Wisconsin. So CLUE, the Center for Land Use Education, has a long history of working with partners to do applied social science and also research. And doing so has really led to really impactful research on various emerging topics throughout Wisconsin that Wisconsinites are interested in and can hopefully use in their local context. Our approach to this applied research really starts with the communities and local stakeholders. They really drive the kind of research and outreach that we're doing. And then through that, we focus on kind of these 3 different buckets of how we kind of solve problems, either through geospatial analysis or computer mapping, looking at applied social sciences, surveys, interviews, focus groups, as well as looking at different policies at the local or state or federal level. And then we turn that information into presentations and workshops, reports, different infographics and diagrams, and also to online tools for mapping. And so it's really great to be able to work at different levels, but then be able to utilize those materials to help other folks throughout the state. Like I said, we've been doing this for about 25 years, but these are some recent partnerships that we've had that have been really, really impactful. And some of the examples I provided before. For example, we worked with Upham Woods on creating a mapping application of their campus site, of highlighting all the recreational opportunities they have, but also highlighting where different types of accessible wheelchairs could be used on different paths at their site. We've worked with Gathering Waters to do some geospatial analysis and some infographic creation to highlight the different types of private land conservation in the state and their role in protecting land in Wisconsin, thinking outside of our state and local parks, but the private conservation like conservation easements, and then different land trusts that own land in fee simple as well. And then different reports on specific issues. So for example, we were kind of commissioned by the Office of Sustainability in Madison to do a solar suitability for the University of Wisconsin, and we provided a technical report that we still use in our outreach today. What's super great about our CLUE partnerships is I'm an assistant professor. Our center is really tied to our conservation community planning program. And so we bring students along for the ride. So a lot of times when people pay us to do work, we use a lot of that money to enhance our undergraduate student experience. Here's Riley and Morgan on the land trust project that I just mentioned. Here's Jordan Campbell, who did the work related to solar suitability in Wisconsin. And so this presentation is kind of highlighting the partnership between CLUE and WICCI, which is the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts. And you'll see essentially a variety of everything, examples that I just kind of highlighted, reports, papers, mapping applications, et cetera, student involvement throughout the presentation, and seeing how we've utilized our partnership to enhance our programming and better understand this key issue throughout the state. And for now, to kind of talk about and provide a little bit of background on what WICCI is and what we do, Natalie will take it from here for a little bit.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, so for folks, as Becky mentioned earlier, my name is Natalie Chin. I'm an outreach specialist with Wisconsin Sea Grant, and I'll be sharing some information with you about WICCI, which is sort of a loose umbrella for much of the work that Austin and I will be sharing with you today. And so before I begin, we're just curious to know, have you heard of WICCI? And if so, how have you used WICCI resources in your work? And if you want to pop that in the chat, that'll be awesome. Okay, and as folks are typing, maybe we can move to the next slide. Thanks. Not heard of it. Okay, cool. Well, for folks who haven't heard of WICCI, it was originally formed in the fall of 2007 as a partnership between the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Nelson Institute. And WICCI really exists at the intersection of science and action and engages with a diverse, large community across the state. And this network includes scientists, practitioners, and community members. And WICCI's goal is really to help foster solutions to climate change in Wisconsin, which includes by doing things like developing scientific understanding of climate impacts, identifying vulnerabilities to climate change and climatic variability in the state, and also supporting folks around the state with their climate change work or resilience efforts. WICCI includes 14 different working groups focused on different topics, and these range from things like forestry to infrastructure to water resources. And Austin and I are both part of the tourism and outdoor recreation working group, which will be the focus of much of our talk today. So yeah, okay. Thanks, folks, for just saying. It seems like many folks have not heard of WICCI, so I'm glad I'm here. And so this is a really timely opportunity for us to be talking about WICCI because the 2026 WICCI report was just released on February 26th. And this is the third assessment report that has come out, with the first being released back in 2011 and the second in 2021. So I'll quickly go through some of the high-level findings from the new report before circling back to why this matters for tourism and outdoor recreation in our state. Next slide. Great. So to start, what does the latest science say that we're seeing in Wisconsin as far as climate goes? Well, definitely warmer and wetter conditions with more rapid shifts between very wet and very dry extremes, as well as more extreme weather events in general. And this is in line with what previous climate model analysis showed, including in the 2021 report. So what does this mean exactly? We're seeing annual average temperatures increasing 3 to 4 degrees since 1950. Our current decade, the 2020s, is on track to be the warmest decade on record. And then we just came out of the wettest decade on record with our 2010s. In addition to that, with a warmer climate in Wisconsin, we're also seeing an increase in extreme weather events, with those becoming unusually pronounced in recent years. So a couple trends to note here include that we're seeing more frequent heavy rainfall events, so events with 2 inches or more rain. We're also seeing more very warm nights, which of course has implications for heat and illness and cooling, demands for cooling technology. In the 2010s, in addition to it being the wettest decade on record, we also saw it as being the most extreme in Wisconsin history. So if you're interested in finding tourism and outdoor recreation specific info in the new report, you can look at the Climate Action Strengthens Economy section. There are also sections focused on things like resilient communities, changing natural spaces, and climate solutions. I'm not going to go into detail about those other 3 sections today, but we'll have a link to the wiki website on our next slide. And this 2026 iteration, it's only about 16 pages, so you'll find links to several resources in the document. It's not very long if you want to take a look at it. Okay. Great. So here's the link to the wiki website, wisc.edu. That's a tongue twister. And you can download the report from the main page of the website, the new report. You'll also find additional tools and resources from the 14 different working groups, which includes the Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Working Group. And you can use that drop-down menu that's on the slide to find some of those. Each working group kind of has its own charge and own initiatives. And so it's interesting to explore a lot of the different working groups and what they're doing. Some of the tools in particular are designed to help local leaders analyze future conditions for climate and also make decisions based on climate science. Okay, so circling back to our topic today, I'm curious to hear from all of you. Why do you think it's important to focus on climate change impacts on tourism and outdoor recreation in Wisconsin? I'm sure people are just typing lots of interesting things. Yep. Okay. Tourism economy for sure. Yeah. Participation. Uh-huh. Yeah. Money. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Impacts to winter outdoor activities. Yeah. Awesome. Public health and income. Yep. Focus on adaptation. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. We can go to the next slide, Austin. So as folks have mentioned already in the chat, tourism and outdoor recreation matter for Wisconsin's economy. And both tourism and outdoor recreation in Wisconsin have been doing very well in the last few years. As you can see here, there's just some overall numbers from the Wisconsin Department of Tourism that shows sort of a $25.8 billion economic impact in 2024, and then outdoor recreation specifically $11.2 billion in 2023. And then, only considering dollars, of course, is oversimplifying things. We know that there are also less easily quantifiable benefits for these activities that they have for things like our mental and physical health. And tourism and outdoor recreation, of course, also intersect with Wisconsin culture and quality of life. And we can go to the next slide. Great. Yeah. So this is also like a very hot topic in the news right now. These are a few headlines that I pulled from Wisconsin Public Radio's website just from this winter season. So we see things like recent mild winters, climate change, unreliable. So there's obviously interest sort of more broadly about what's happening and the impacts that we're already seeing across the state. Great. Yeah, so given that we know that as we talked about a little bit earlier about the projections for Wisconsin and what the historical data is showing already, we know that Wisconsin is getting warmer. And so what are some of the important trends for tourism and outdoor recreation? Well, we're expecting to also see things like more extreme heat days, a decrease in cold days, fewer days suitable for snowmaking, which of course has implications for winter tourism and outdoor recreation. More freeze thaw days, so kind of fluctuations between uh, around freezing temperatures. Fewer mild weather days, shifting seasons, warming water temperature, and losses in ice cover. And then with Wisconsin experiencing more precipitation, we're also sort of considering what that means for tourism and outdoor recreation, as far as things like increase in intense rain events, the fact that more precipitation will be falling as rain than snow, and how volatile changes in lake levels are going to impact outdoor activities. So what does this mean for tourism and outdoor recreation? I think it's important to note that impacts, of course, do vary geographically and seasonally, as well as by activity. But here are a few ways that climate and tourism and outdoor recreation intersect. And so I'm going to go through these in more detail, but I'm also curious to hear from you in the chat what impacts you're experiencing related to this topic. So starting with summer, we know that summer is Wisconsin's biggest season in terms of tourism. And so with climate change, there actually might be some benefit as far as Wisconsin gaining a competitive advantage compared to other locations if the tourism season grows or if other places become too hot. However, things like extreme heat and damaging storms are concerns. So with extreme heat, folks may choose not to be outside all summer when temperatures are extremely hot because of risk to human health and safety. We've also seen extreme storms and flooding and how that can cause damage, including in Wisconsin. We saw that in the recent years with places like Pheasant Branch Conservancy and Saxon Harbor, and then even just last year, an impact to the Wisconsin State Fair from major flooding. In terms of fall, we may also see a lengthening season due to warming temperatures. So we talk about sort of lengthening shoulder seasons, which is spring and fall. On the other hand, we know that seasonal shifts in climate may lead to changes in things like species composition in our state's natural areas, which includes impacts to fall color season. We also know that there are vulnerabilities for culturally significant species like wild rice and birch. Winter tourism and outdoor recreation, I think, some of those headlines that I shared are showing this already, but it's expected to suffer the most under climate change. In particular, any activity that requires reliable and significant snowpack or ice cover. And that's something that we've definitely heard about in our work as part of the Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Working Group, which Austin will go into more detail about later. So I won't go into detail about that right now. And then for spring, we really expect that the availability of species for things like hunting and fishing, bird behavior and migration could all change, which may require some adjustments in terms of management decisions, as well as the timing of when those activities are taking place or people are engaging with them. We may also see the appearance of more non-local species and impacts to maple sugaring season, for example. And then next slide. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing, which was that these are the types of things that our working group has been thinking about, as well as how we link climate science with tourism and outdoor recreation professionals and communities that rely on these kinds of activities. Just 2 winters ago, we saw that northern Wisconsin communities declared an economic emergency because of low snowfall. And we really want to be able to help with challenges like these in the ways that we can. So with that, I'll turn it over to Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. Yeah, and that was kind of the last part that Natalie kind of highlighted is how do we actually take all this information and scale it down for people to utilize in extension and outreach at the local level. Um, so Natalie and I, along with Michelle Probst, who no longer works for Extension, kind of we're trying to work on this question, right? So how do we take this large scale information about climate trends and at the statewide level and make it more utilizable for people in their communities, either local stakeholders like working at the community level or at the town, but also statewide industries, like winter, for example. How are they being impacted across, or for beaches or whatever, right? Specific statewide recreational types as well. And so we kind of started gathering information at both levels to see how we could go about this. When we started this around 2022 when I started working here at Clue. We started pretty small. We went to Canoacopia, and in 2023, I believe that's coming up relatively soon, or might, yeah, in March. And we had a table and we sat down there and we asked folks, are they experiencing impacts themselves, right? Because everything that we have read or thought about, it really was supposed to highlight that they possibly would be experiencing these impacts. And we kind of got a lot of responses saying that they had, right? That they had experienced these and they had impacted their recreational and outdoor pursuits. And then at the same time, we were thinking, how can we better understand a statewide industry, right? And thinking how they might be impacted, and have some research that was happening that would occur within the state of Wisconsin, because there's not a ton of research out there in general about the impacts of downhill skiing and climate change and winter recreation. And a lot of it that does exist is either in like the Rocky Mountain region, or the eastern parts of the United States and Canada, or in Northern Europe. And so we were kind of thinking, we know that there's an increase in precipitation or in temperatures and along with precipitation changes, but are people actually experiencing this? We thought the downhill ski industry was a great way to look at this because first, there's a small sample size, roughly 32 in the state, and they can't move. They're site specific, right? If you're a snowmobiler, you hypothetically could put your snowmobiles on a trailer and go to an open trail if yours is closed that's near your home. But if you have a downhill ski hill operation, right, you're kind of stuck by your geographic location. And so we interviewed managers and owners of Wisconsin and of downhill ski hills. We had about 8 total, which is actually pretty great. 25% of the overall population, which is pretty good for social science research related to qualitative analysis. And we started these interviews, and it turned into a report that Becky just dropped in the chat that you can read about. I'm just going to provide like a high level findings. So our key finding from this paper was really interesting. The first one is that all mentioned climate change impacts, but they all varied by location. So depending on where they were in the state, they were being impacted in different ways. We interviewed folks during just after the 2022-2023 winter season. And if you look at here, we've got a bivariate map. So the blue colors are precipitation, the red colors are temperature. And if you see a purple, that means it's both high in temperature and precipitation, right? Which are 2 leading factors. If you put a lot of snow on your hill, right, you make a bunch of snow, and then the temperature rises a little bit, and it gets a little, it starts to melt, and then the rain comes. You lost all the work that you had just kind of put in. And they talked about this in the study, that people in these regions of the state were really being impacted more by climatic changes than those, in the northern region. When we asked them, for example, what was the most challenging thing to deal with, increased precipitation or temperature, They said both. Essentially, or neither. It was the volatility, right? It was the changes within a season. So they might have a really great snowfall during the week, and then right before the weekend comes, the temperature rises a little bit, and they've got to go make snow or groom the hill in a certain way. And their main adaptation strategy for this was snowmaking. Almost every single participant mentioned that they are making snow. They're heavily investing in snowmaking so they can make sure that their hills are staying open and ready to go and in good condition. They also talked about things like slope management, so investing in more grooming equipment so that their hills can be more managed to maintain that snow for longer and to stay in a good condition that customers prefer. But they also too heavily invested into technology for planning for future. Most of us have an app on our phone that tells us a 7-day forecast. They would invest in larger technologies and software packages that would help them make longer term planning and more specific meteorological data available to them to make snow. Key finding two, I think, was the one we weren't necessarily expecting, and I think is probably the most interesting, is that they felt one of the largest impacts that they were dealing with was actually marketing. Everything else was a challenge that they kind of were dealing with, but this was kind of a new challenge for them. Because they felt like a lot of the times people didn't know that they had snow on their hills, even though it might be 40 degrees or 37 degrees, etc. They felt that they would have snow, but people would maybe not think because there was no snow on the ground outside that they wouldn't think to go skiing at their resort. And this is described as backyard effect, which has been documented in the literature that I previously mentioned about looking at how different people decide when to go skiing or not. And to highlight some of these examples, a participant had said, I mean, we see a jump in sales whenever we have actual snowfall. So that natural snowfall really is tied to whether or not they sell. Even if it's only 3 or 4 inches of natural snowfall can boost sales for us, even though we've had snow for months on our own, right? So it's just educating those guests that just because there isn't snow in your backyard doesn't mean that we're not open. And this participant was really interesting because they had mentioned, they cater to a large audience right throughout the Midwest, people from Chicago, Milwaukee, etc., all coming to their site. And they say, our local customers, they know that we have snow and they come pretty regularly. But if you go down to Chicago, for example, right, there's no better marketing than 2 inches of snow in someone's backyard. And they said nothing beats it. Like if Chicago gets some snow, then that means that people are thinking to go have fun in the snow and they'll come up and spend their time and money, which is kind of interesting. And after doing this study, there's an audience question about if you've ever felt like this or if you've ever experienced this in your personal life. In terms of if you like to go ski or do outdoor recreation related to those. And how they're adapting to this, they were really increasing their marketing, both on social media, but also in ads, highlighting that they do have snow. And some of them were using like webcams, etc., to highlight to folks that it might not look like it's you can go skiing, but you can actually go skiing now. Really focusing on education of the public. And then really all of these were tied with a big presence on social media. Our participants were also asked what they thought the future of skiing in Wisconsin would look like. Overall, everyone was really positive. They were riding this COVID bump, if you're not familiar with it. Essentially, that after COVID-19 or during COVID-19, everyone either started or went back to outdoor recreating at a higher rate than normal. And this was across all types of outdoor recreation. And they were feeling those positive impacts from that too. And a couple of years out, again, this was done in these interviews were happening in the summer of 2023. They were still feeling the positive impacts of that outdoor recreation surge. But some of them do worry about the future. It was kind of interesting. Some people, these are family-owned businesses, and they would say, my dad would never imagine the things that we have to do to plan for snowing and snowmaking. I can't imagine what my children are going to have to deal with. Thinking about the future adaptation strategies, most people are going to continue to focus on investing in snowmaking as the key adaptation strategy. Um, Education and outreach was another key component of trying to make sure people know that they can go skiing, but also really focusing on offering other activities. So if for example, investing in mountain biking or fat tire biking or snowshoeing, where the snow conditions don't need to be great or even there, and they could still offer some sort of opportunity for people to come and recreate and spend time and money. Other activities included things like weddings, etc., in the off season too. They also focus on things like they looked at other states, and they kind of highlighted that other states have really robust K through 12 programs that they'd like to emulate, getting people out on the hills, but also to different incentives for updating equipment. And what was really interesting about this is they were talking about a really rough winter in 2023, 2020 or 2022 to 2023, and then when we were doing our write up, Natalie had mentioned this in while she was chatting, that there was the worst winter, right, that many people had seen in a long time due to El Nino, and there was an economic emergency related to winter sports in Wisconsin. And so it would have been really interesting to get their perspective during this year, but we didn't have the paperwork done to do those interviews. But it was really, really interesting to see kind of this event that took place right after interviewing with folks. But something that we took away from this project in trying to always take our research and make it into something actionable for people utilized, we realized that these impacts that are being experienced in Wisconsin due to our interesting geography of our state, it's a large state, diverse landscapes, that outdoor recreation is experiencing climate change differently depending on where you live. And so that was a key part of our interview study, and then also in some other aspects of our climate change data that we have available to us. And so what we did was create a regional impacts of climate change on tourism and outdoor recreation in a story map form. There's going to be a link to that in the chat here in a second. But essentially, a student of ours here put together a story map based on a literature review, kind of seeing what the impacts would be, what the main recreation opportunities are within the statewide comprehensive recreation plan from the DNR, and then seeing based on the literature review how they might be impacted by climate change. And so we're able to create this, which I think is a really great tool. And there's actually a PDF version of this in the newest SCORP report that was just released last year. But we're going to continually update our story map here with more information that we get as we continue to do this kind of research and outreach and better understand this issue in the state. And then with that, we thought not everybody can carry around a laptop and look at our story map. So we created regional fact sheets for these. So there's an example of this one in the chat. Again, looking at that peer-reviewed literature, trying to figure out different impacts based on the recreational opportunities in the different regions in Wisconsin. And we kind of put these together. These were funded by the Board of Commissions on Public Lands. And you can find those on our wiki website. If you scroll to the bottom, you can look at the different regions that you might live in and download those to hopefully utilize in your planning moving forward as well. I just want to kind of highlight some of the great students that we've had working on this project. We had Hannah Higgins, who was a key part of our research for the downhill ski paper, excuse me. What was great about Hannah, not only was she really well versed and a really talented student, but she also was a lifelong skier. So it was really helpful for us because I don't ski, and it was really nice for her to provide that perspective. And then Dylan has been working on this work here. He created the story map as well as the information behind the infographics and the fact sheets. And he's also currently working on literature review with the Department of Natural Resources and Wiki to look at essentially how the Great Lakes region is being impacted by climate change. And so we can utilize those different strategies and drive future research and information. And so that was kind of what we had done up to this point. And then Natalie and the rest of us were kind of working on this project. And we kind of were like, well, we've worked on this stuff for 2 to 3 years. But we really don't have a lot of those. We create a lot of educational materials, which is really great and important for extension and for folks to utilize. But we kind of wanted to shift, right? Wiki's perspective is to create action, right? And so we kind of wanted to move a little bit from education to kind of that action, but we didn't necessarily feel like we had all the answers to confidently put that information out there. And so we decided, what if we did another small research project that we focused on extension professionals and tourism professionals to see from other regions of the United States to see what they've experienced and what they're working on, and their opinions on extension's role in this work. And so we went to NETRA, which is the National Extension Tourism Conference, this last fall, and we did focus groups with professionals during one of the breakout sessions to kind of highlight. We asked them what climate impacts they're experiencing, any sort of observed adaptation strategies that they've participated in or seen in their communities, and their view on extension's role in this work. And so it was really fun. These are the different NETRA regions that people work within, and the Northeast region was hosting, so it was a combined conference, and it was really, really great opportunity to network and see how other people viewed this work. And so they were experiencing similar climate impacts to us, right? They were experiencing less snow, extreme weather, and also this shifting seasons component that is really, really challenging. A lot of folks talked about less rain, but also then more rain, and then kind of, going on and on with some like less wildfire, more snow, less extreme weather. Was not marked by anyone, and nobody marked none. So everyone in the group, which was about 10 participants, highlighted that they had experienced some sort of climate impact. The main adaptation strategies that they kind of outlined and provided for us were technological fixes, so things like misters when it's too hot, doing more infrastructure like culverts to make sure that they're widened, can handle more storm damage, things like snowmaking that we had talked about, and then also some educational work. So informing tourism communities about the changes in climate, but also to guests as well, realizing that things are shifting, right? To plan accordingly, to be safe out in the outdoors, because things can change really, really rapidly. And the biggest adaptation strategy that they'd kind of presented was similar to what we'd found in our downhill ski study, which is diversify visitor experiences. So if your tourism is based on winter, right? How might you be able to provide some sort of shoulder season experience, or help support creating a different or more unique activities that people can do if there's a severe rain event, or and everything that you used to do on the outside has to be held indoors, for example. And we asked them what, like, the adaptation strategies they've seen, what makes them successful and what makes them fail. A lot of them talked about failures occur when we're trying to fight changes instead of working with them, right? Instead of some of the examples they gave related to winter tourism was that, the snow, there's less snow coming, right? How can we utilize and address that and work with that change rather than trying to fight the fact that there's less snow, or there's more rain, etc. And almost everyone kind of highlighted this or felt that extension should play an active role in this space. Some people said we should lead the conversation. Some people said we should be facilitating conversations at a community level, to kind of come up with different action plans related to tourism and outdoor recreation. But despite that, only about 3 folks in the room had actually worked on these projects, and so this seemed like a really an area where extension could grow its impact, an area for us to kind of work in this space more, in a variety of ways. And so, kind of coming to the end here, next steps for Wiki. So, we've got our new action plan that we kind of worked together to create and kind of what we're going to focus on moving forward. Some of it is some things that we've done in the past, like continue to collect data sources like climate data from the statewide climatology office, as well as other information. Like I said, Dylan's working on that paper about how other people in the Midwest are dealing with this, so we can utilize those resources and get it in the hands of people making decisions. Working with our Indigenous groups and to incorporate Indigenous knowledge into our working group a bit more intentionally is something that we really want to utilize going forward between now and next Wiki report. And then taking what we've learned in creating a toolkit. So again, really focusing on those actionable steps, thinking about on an individual level, but also from a community space, that we've got some steps that they could utilize moving forward to pair really well with our educational materials. So I'm kind of going to wrap things up with some lessons learned, and Natalie, feel free to jump on and add to this. So over the past 4-ish years since I've joined and we've been kind of partnering, it kind of feels like climate change programming is challenging, right? It's a very hard topic to kind of address and kind of think about, taking large scale data and utilizing in a local space, but it's needed. This is something that people are really interested in and wanting to know how to utilize it. Every local state or local and state stakeholders that we've interacted with across the state and doing these things have been really receptive and positive, and really wanting to kind of better prepare for the future. Local efforts are key, right? Meeting with communities for presentations and highlighting local impacts. We've done that with Door County, and would really like to utilize do this more going forward. And then continue to gather feedback from people like y'all about what's most helpful for folks, right? What could actually help them move the needle to be a little bit more prepared, a little bit more resilient as things continue to change. And then we're going to continue our statewide efforts of disseminating information and via reports and presentations, and then continue the research on different sports research impacts on specific sports and recreational seasons and how those might be impacted. So we're working with the Health Wiki Working Group currently on a harmful algal bloom project, not harmful algal bloom, on a micro adaptation like event adaptation strategy, so that we can kind of give folks some information to make sure that their events in the summer can reduce heat-borne illnesses. And then also too, I think the most interesting thing about this work is that people are already adapting to this in really creative and interesting ways. And so trying to go and understand what people are already doing, the people in the field working in this are the ones who are doing a lot of the really innovative work, are those people working in this space, trying to understand what makes it work, what makes it doesn't, and how we can kind of get those mined for those little gold nuggets of success so that we can transplant that and share that information with other folks across the state too. Just want to really quick acknowledgements before moving into a Q&A session. Just really want to thank Natalie for being a great partner, Michelle Probst, Hannah Higgins, and Dylan. The entire Wiki working group has been awesome. And then also the participants of the Downhill Ski project and the extension focus groups too. And I'm going to open it up for any sort of questions. You can either throw it in the chat, or you could turn off your mic and ask us.
Thanks, Austin and Natalie. I will also direct everyone to the question that we're asking you to share on. What resources or information would you like to see Wiki focus on regarding tourism recreation? And you could, beyond that, you can also ask general questions. We've had a couple of folks share already. Heidi is looking for a guide or a checklist for communities to think about these impacts when writing comprehensive outdoor recreation plans, and also a list of resources and data related to topics by area. And then there was also one open question from Walt. Has your team used the data to study or apply to hunting, fishing, camping?
Yeah, I can give an initial answer, and thanks, Heidi, for that suggestion. I think that it aligns exactly with sort of what Austin shared about our work plan for our Wiki working group over the next 2 years is really to focus on sort of a toolkit or solutions guide to help folks who are in the industry understand what adaptation options are out there. But I think sort of implementable, sort of more easily implementable steps that folks could take when they're thinking about writing these comprehensive outdoor recreation plans is a great suggestion. So something definitely I will be thinking about. And then Walt, to answer your question about using data to study hunting, fishing, camping, we haven't dug into those specific sports as much, and I think part of the issue is sort of what data is available. In a lot of cases, like sport specific data is not great. So we'd have to probably engage in sort of an in-depth study, kind of what, as Austin shared with the downhill ski paper that we worked on. And again, the thing that made that easier was that we could easily identify where those ski resorts were. And so with activities that are a little bit more diverse or sort of spread out, it'll be a little bit more challenging. But I think that we sort of with looking at data and what data is available, we can sort of start to collect more information and resources about what we do have access to, and then think about what the gaps are and where we can use that to sort of make some observations or studies about other kinds of sports besides downhill skiing. So, Austin, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to?
Yeah, that's great. And I would say that if you go look at the fisheries working group and the wildlife working group, they've done some interesting work that's more on the research side. And something that we found through our student doing this literature review about sports and sport specific adaptations. There's like a lot of work that kind of examines like climate change on a specific game species, but not necessarily how that impacts from the angler perspective or how that impacts from like the guides, for example, or the bait and tackle shops. And so that's something that I think has been kind of a gap that we hopefully, we're a small team, but could hopefully highlight the need to do that research to hopefully come up with key strategies for those folks. So great question though.
One more suggestion came from Melissa, connecting to overall comprehensive plans and strategic actions to update comprehensive plans. And there's a whole variety of things listed here: adaptation planning, emergency planning, protecting cultural resources and sites, and integrating tribes into these topics.
Yeah, and that's where the work with the health working group, the wiki working group, I think is really going to be hopefully helpful. It kind of borders between that like adaptation planning and emergency planning for different events, like specifically in the summer where we see a lot of issues related to overheating of vulnerable populations, and coming up with an actionable step to be kind of hopefully a bit more preemptive in providing those spaces where people can get some relief from the heat.
And for Melissa, I just actually had a call earlier this week with a graduate student at UW-Madison. I believe Ken Jensko and Via Showalter are both looking at this from the perspective of how do we think about hazard mitigation planning and other types of strategies that can be connected to comprehensive plans. So look for some research and tools related to that coming out soon. While we're waiting for others to chime in with questions or suggestions, Austin and Natalie, I'm wondering if you could share if someone is interested or they think about research needs or resources that they'd like to see advertised on a more statewide basis. What's the best way to connect with you or with others, maybe with the Wiki working group even?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I probably should have Let me link to our working group website, and it does have my email on there. And I can also just pop my email into the chat. But oops, sorry, I only sent that to one person. Let me try that again. Okay, so that's specifically to our working group webpage, and then here is my email. Specifically, if folks want to get in touch, and definitely welcome any suggestions, thoughts. If you want to get involved, if you want to join our working group, that's also an option. We're also always looking for new folks to who are interested in this topic and want to add to our small but mighty team. But yeah, there's all of our resources and information is there, and definitely feel free to get in touch, and I can pass information along to other working group members if I'm not the right person. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say too, is one, if you'd like to join our working group, feel free. It's really great. It's low, I would say low commitment. I would say we meet a few times a year and we kind of talk about different projects we're working on, and how you can get involved. It's really great. But if you just want to email me and set up a meeting, I just put my email in the chat. I might be happy to do that too. And it could be anything from wanting to, talk about a project, or if you would just want a presentation or anything at your local community, let us know too.
There was just one
Yeah, and
more.
thanks.
Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
was just going to say thanks, Melissa, for the suggestion to connect with NATO. The executive director a couple of iterations ago was a part of our working group, but then moved on. So it's important for us to reconnect. So thanks for that reminder.
Since I'm not seeing other questions, I'm wondering, Natalie and Austin, you guys were mentioning a toolkit that you're working on, both individual and community level suggestions within that toolkit. Could you give us a little sneak preview of what types of things that you're thinking about for inclusion in that toolkit?
Well, this is a very, very new thing that hasn't really been started, but I think we have some bones for it with projects or products that we've already put out, which Austin was talking about, some with like the fact sheets sort of linking the impact with like what could communities actually do. So I think we could definitely include some of that. And then I don't know, Austin talked about this, just the difficulty of sort of like climate change is so big, like what practical actions can folks really take? And I think we've started to try and look at that with Dylan's projects, kind of doing the literature review to look at adaptation strategies. And I feel like there's a lot out there, but maybe not necessarily using the lens of tourism and outdoor recreation. So I think there's some connecting that we can do in terms of how helping folks sort of connect those dots. Um, I also really like the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science has some of these adaptation strategy menus, and they do have one for outdoor recreation. So I think taking a closer look at that, or maybe that will probably be in the toolkit as a resource that you can use. But I think, yeah, it's really trying to help reduce or remove these barriers to sort of taking action based on what climate projections are saying, and making it just feel a little bit less big or hard to do things that will be helpful for building resilience.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of in the kind of rebuilding, kind of what are we going to do type phase. And we've kind of outlined these areas, and we have a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks to kind of get a bit more focused on that. I think something we talked about too, which I think is really would be interesting, is we have all these news stories that are coming out, for example, about different parts of the state and different industries that are adapting. So creating kind of like a clearinghouse, maybe a map of the state where you can like go click on the Birkebinder and see that story about how they're adapting to climate change, and different parts about that, different parts that could then not necessarily be like how to, but also just, hey, maybe this is something that we could do within our own space. So yeah, hopefully it'll be useful, and we're going to get feedback from specific stakeholders, and um, hopefully it can be a useful tool for folks. If not, then we'll try to make it better after that. So
Natalie, I was listening to what you were saying about the adaptation menus. Does that look like I put the right link in there?
Yeah, that looks right. I didn't click on the link yet, but I'll
Oh,
let you
no,
know if not.
that's okay. Well, wonderful. So we are attempting to record this webinar and we'll make it available to participants. But I want to thank you all for attending. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to throw those in the chat real quick, or you can also unmute yourself. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to both Natalie and Austin after the fact. I think this is a fantastic opportunity to share your work. So thank you for the great work that you're both doing. And thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for joining us. Any other parting words, Austin or Natalie, that you want to share?
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. So.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the great suggestions.
Absolutely. I've seen some thank yous come in as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.